Alright guys, got your boy Jet Stinger here today, and today we're back with some reverse 1999 content for you guys here today. And today we're here to give you guys some teams for Hissabeth. Hissabeth should be releasing fairly soon, so I want to get you guys started with some teams that you can run with Hissabeth. So if you guys want to go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, that will be well appreciated. And let's get right into it. Let's check out some teams for Hissabeth, starting with our first team. Alright, going to be our first team here today. It's going to be our budget, basically our 5-star or below minimum team. And this is the team that I would recommend running with Hissabeth. If you're just starting out, there's 2 blank spots here. Because the second unit I'm going to be recommending is going to be Name Day. And he does come with the Hissabeth banner. So first slot will be Hissabeth, this will be Name Day. And that's just kind of your core team. I like Barb here because this gives you a little bit of, there is a bit of confliction between the two because they're both shielders, but I like Barb specifically because she can help rank up cards with her special unique Dream Visit effect. This is really good for Hissabeth because this allows you to accumulate more stacks of her buff a little bit more quickly this way. So that is something that you can actually run. It's an option, it's not like a direct necessity, but it does actually help you in the long haul. So I do actually recommend that. If you don't want to use Barb, you could go with an old 1.0 pick, and that is going to actually be Satsuki. Satsuki can be used here because she does have access to Rigidity, so does Hissabeth, so you can kind of put them two together as a way of putting Petrify on the enemies, which is fine. And for the most part, we want Yensei just for the healing. That's really just it. And of course, the damage taken up effect. But there's really not too much here for the team specifically. It's just more so just I put Barb here for her potential ability to have, I guess, more consistent shields as opposed to when Yensei only has it with ult. And the ability to potentially cause rank ups to allow for Hissabeth to have more consistent access to her buff, like get more stacks a little bit more quickly. That's really just it. You can even get away with using 1-star Kaz and it's still fine, but for what it's worth, for her buff card, you can actually use it as a way to boost the amount of stacks that you can get. That just makes it a little bit more sustainable, but just not really too much that has to be said about this team at all. It's very simple, it's very to the point, it's just 1-to-1, that's it. And then of course we have bringing Name Day. I wanted to bring Name Day because Hissabeth is a part of the Ultimate Might faction, so she does need some form of an Ultimate Might support. So I would actually agree to bring some type of unit that can buff Ultimate Might, and Name Day is quite frankly one of the best ones you could bring in the game. He has a very strong Ultimate Might buff. Even at P0 he gives you 50%, and he also causes for the unit adjacent to him, so it's very important that you put him you put some next to Hissabeth, because he's gonna make the unit adjacent to him, he's gonna have their ultimates not cost any AP. This is really cool because Hissabeth is already a really good AP friendly unit, because what you're mainly gonna be doing with Hissabeth 9 times out of 10 is using buff and then attacking with the Hiss cards that you generate, and then you can use your ult whenever. So you really don't consume that much AP because Hiss doesn't take up AP, and the only AP that you're taking is from buff or ult. At least Hissabeth can get this help from Name Day to not even have the ult itself take up any AP, which is actually pretty good. So for what it's worth, I think it's a fun combination. Of course, he does come with her on the banner, so there's no real reason why you really shouldn't run them together. But yeah, that's going to be the 5-star or below budget team. Let's go over to some other options. Alright, so the next team that we'll be talking about is using Hissabeth as a sub DPS. So what this team is obviously meant to do is act as of course, a sub option for Pickles. Normally, this is the same team you'd run with Ricoletta, just Rico, Pickles, Millennia, Fatutu. But instead of Pickles, I decided to put in another DPSer, a sub DPSer in the way of Hissabeth instead. Hissabeth actually does synergize very well with Ricoletta because Hissabeth gives you consistent AoE ultimates, which is a very quick way for her to build up in symbol narrative. One of the things that was the big issue, well, not really a big issue, I shouldn't say that, but one of the things that's been a slight issue for Ricoletta is that she has to commit to turns to building of her symbol. So there's a build up process, right? Which isn't necessarily the end of the world, right? because you can get away with using like maybe 1 to 2 a turn, and you can get your 20 stacks and then be done pretty quickly. But if you want a super fast burst, you have now access to a way to actually build it. Because remember, with Millennia on your team, you're automatically starting off with her ult, so that means that's 10 stacks of Momo Mythic, and then you have Hissabeth, who can very easily, once you kind of get into her rotation, which is using her buff, using ult, and then using those Hiss attacks, which do not take AP by the way, then you can really start getting into a consistent pattern of using AoE ults with Hissabeth. So this is going to be giving you your symbol narrative, and this is going to be giving you your mythic narrative. One of the also really cool ways to really generate or to guarantee having ult is that both of these units can inflict passion drain. Ricoletta has the ability to do this on her card, and so does Millennia whenever she attacks. So you can use this as a way to make Hissabeth gain even more Moxie, because Hiss, based off of its incantation level, so from 1 to 2 to 3, she can gain additional Moxie. So that on top of the passion drain effect will help her continuously be able to cycle her ultimate, and then she's going to be able to give you those stacks of Ensemble. So that's really, really cool. So the core member of the team, of course, is our main DPS option. It's going to be Rico. Of course, she's going to be there in the back while the stacks are being built up. Of course, Millennia gets it very quickly done, because obviously she can generate ult even without the passion drain effect. And then Hissabeth is going to be your Ensemble build, alongside of her being able to build up her own Ensemble stacks as well, with the use of this card right here, where you are attacking into an AoE enemy, and then you can get 5 stacks of Ensemble, while Hissabeth is also casting ults to get you another stack as well. Millennia for this team, of course, is going to be the big support, the 72% ultimate might up, and the ultimate might crit rate, crit damage buff, all the additional stuff that she provides, the passion drain and all that stuff. If you don't have Millennia, then you can use Name Day for this team, but I would consider putting Name Day, I would maybe consider putting him maybe in slot 2, because Rico still needs to effectively use AP to cast ult, where at least Hissabeth is at least AP generous enough to where she can kind of get away with it. So you could run it like that. If you were to run Name Day, just go put him in slot 2, run Ricoletta, then run Millennia, run Hissabeth in the slot behind him. So that's really just it. So, because he can only put it up to one ally. He's not going to be able to put it up on both allies, unfortunately. So, but he still does provide a 50% ultimate damage buff to the team, which is still, again, pretty decent. So, for what it's worth, he also has access to he can dispel if anything, so there's that. And of course, he has the ceremonious stacks, which means additional ultimate might and stuff. But yeah, and then of course, for 2-2, kind of just stays the same. Really, it doesn't really change. You can of course always just go Kakania. It doesn't necessarily matter which of the 2 supports that you use here. I mean, which of the 2 sustains you're using here, because both of them are exceptionally good for the role. So whatever one you want to go for is based on what you have in your account. It's really just that. Like, if you have for 2-2, use for 2-2. If you don't, use Kakania. If you want, maybe use someone else, like just a healer instead. There is an argument to use, let me find her, or find them, I should say. There is an argument to use Medicine Bucket, because this does give you access to a sustain, but it also gives you access to a crit shredder, which is good for both of them. So if you wanted to run that, that's also a considerable option as well. But yeah, that's going to be using Hissabeth as a sub DPS team. You run it with Rico. Of course, you have the 2 of them build up the Ensemble stacks together, and you have a 2-2 just to keep your team alive. And then of course, Rico's going to do the big thing she does best, which is fire off a disastrously strong ult and do what she does. Anyway, let's go over to the next team. Alright, so we are back with the next team. This is going to be a team focusing on Hissabeth as a main DPS this time around. So this is going to be the team that we recommend for you to use if you want to consider using your Hissabeth as a main DPS for content. So this is what I recommend. I recommend Millennia as always for the big 72% ultimate might boost, the crit rate, the passion drain, all that good stuff. So basically all I said about the second team still applies with using Millennia in your team. However, if you don't have her, again, just use Name Day. It gives you a alternative to ultimate damage buff, and it gives you access to ceremonious and all the other stuff that he does provide. But Vila is going to be your support of choice. Vila is actually very important here. The big reason why is because Vila and Hissabeth are they're just really good partners with each other, because Hissabeth is a mental unit, so that means she gets the stronger buff. But one of the really cool combinations between Vila and Hissabeth, namely, is how her buff works. So one of the things we always talk about with Vila is that whenever she casts an incantation with this buff active, or whenever you have an ally with this buff with this effect active, whenever they cast an incantation, they get extra boost of damage, right? Well, you would think, since hypothetically, right, his is a up to 3-star cast incantation, but it's considering itself as ultimate might damage. Here's the really cool thing about this, is that this buff still works on those individual casts of Hiss, because Hiss is still considered as an incantation first before it converts itself over to ultimate might. So using Vila's buff is not wasted. Obviously it still wouldn't be wasted because she still is a mental unit, meaning she will still get the higher crit rate, crit damage, so 30% crit rate, 40% crit damage boost. But the modifier part would have been wasted. But I've confirmed with a few people saying that Vila's buff does actually work with Hissabeth. So this means that you will be able to get that 200% modifier that's additionally casted onto Hiss, which is really cool. I put Argus here as a last option because it's actually a really cool synergy between the two of them as well. I know this seems a lot of fun synergy ideas. So Argus is our primary debuffer of choice and dispeller, but the really cool thing here is going to be the Gravedigger effect. If you guys know, Argus has a special follow-up that triggers basically tied to the amount of cards that's in your spell queue, right? Basically the amount of stars determines what type of cast it'll be, right? The really cool thing between the two of them is that since Hissabeth will more than likely be casting multiple casts of 3-star Hiss cards, especially if you can know to keep up your buffs and everything and get her in a good proper rotation, this basically means that Argus gets free cast of her 3-star follow-up, which can help her contribute to the team. That's really just what it's for. So it's a free cast of a level 3 Gravedigger effect, which of course it's a 300% effect which gains Moxie plus 8, and it's always a crit. So I mean, it's just extra damage that Argus can contribute for the team. Nothing really special, it's just extra damage. If you're like a certain someone I know who has a P5 Argus, that's going to be a really good way to kind of help her get consistent level 3s, because Argus doesn't really have a real good way of consistent level 3s. I mean, the only other option I could think of at the top of my head is like Anali, but even with Anali and her Euphoria, that's still a little bit sketchy because you have to kind of plan out your cards. But for the most part, that's really just it. But yeah, so we have Millennia, of course, for the Ultimate Might application. We have Vila for the synergy between the two of them for her song and her support and her healing. And then we have Argus, who can be your debuffer of choice. And then you can proceed to give her more stacks of Gravedigger. Of course, her own debuff is also pretty good too, especially when you're targeting one enemy with Hiss anyway. This of course gives you access to a critical shred and a critical defense shred and defense damage taken down, my bad. So yeah, really good combination between all three of these units. I think this is a fine combination. So let's go over to the next team. Alright, so this is going to be the final team of the video, and this is going to be focusing on using her in combination with Druvis. So Druvis is a really cool partner for her because they're kind of like a petrification core. Druvis can petrify enemies based on certain stacks, and of course Hissabeth does actually build up petrification by casting rigidity. So both of them can kind of act as a really cool core to kind of act as a petrification loop for certain stages and reveries. But of course, that's really just the core of the synergy. Of course, Druvis being a plant character, she gets all of the effects from the effect of her Euphoria effect, which comes from this right here. All of these extra bonuses can be applied to Hissabeth because she herself is a plant character herself. So that of course means she can get the extra damage, she can get the extra stats and all that good stuff. So that's another good reason why I wanted to run them two together, which is fine. Of course, Millennia is here. Very obvious reason why. Ultimate Might, Shred, Ultimate Might, Ultimate Damage, all that stuff I just said earlier. I've said this like 3 different times now. But for the most part, Melania is here for the very same reason, just to give ultimate might buffs and all that stuff. And Juvis is here for the Euphoria support. But I wanted to add a sustain option, right? Now, if you do want to focus on Juvis' Euphoria, then you can just run Kakania instead. There's nothing natively wrong for you to run Kakania at all. There's nothing wrong. But I wanted to add a way to further amplify my damage. And this is where Medicine Pocket Euphoria comes in. Because Medicine Pocket Euphoria, whenever they cast their debuff skill, they can give a critical resist and a critical defense shred that's actually pretty massive with their Euphoria. And whenever they cast Alchemy Wear, they can put up a shield, which is a form of sustain. So I was kind of able, by looking at Medicine Pocket's kit, kind of able to fulfill like both the bullets I was looking for when building this team, which was kind of having someone who can be a sustain option, but also further amplifying. Using Kakania, you're not really getting too much of an option to help build damage. Yes, you can buff up Hissabeth with a Solace buff, which gives her flat attack stat, plus the amount of empathy, which is still a thing. That's still a buff. But I wanted something that was a little bit more powerful than the Solace effect. So I decided on going Medicine Pocket instead. And this is just kind of the team I came up with. This is just one. This gives you access to someone who can consistently shield you. Every time you get hit, Medicine Pocket automatically casts Alchemy Wear to put up more shields. So that's pretty good. And of course, if you want to just kind of shred the enemy, then of course you simply pop the debuff card. It also comes with damage taken up effect, which is, 3 different debuffs in one card. Pretty good. So there's that. But for what it's worth, this is what I've chose for the team. So again, as for glue options, Millennia is pretty much a must. Again, if you don't though, just use Name Day for the 90th time. Juvis is a must because the whole core of it is really just synergizing the two of them together with their respective rigidity and petrification effects. And of course, Juvis's overall boost of stats that she can give on Euphoria. One of the things I wanted to talk about in the future though, this is actually something that highlights the future, is Juvis got a second Euphoria, and this is more so speculation, so you can kind of tune out on this part of the video. I haven't seen enough videos to make concrete evidence, but once we get closer to 3.0, I'll probably come back and talk about it. But there's actually a pretty cool synergy between Hissabeth and Juvis again because of the whole Fire Sprouts thing. This is really cool because Hissabeth being one of the only few units that can help trigger all of the Fire Sprouts. The only other unit that's a plant that will be preferred is actually, if I can find her, is actually Marcus. So both Marcus and her are currently stated to be really good casts for Fire Sprouts. Now obviously this is a new kind of form of archetype of damage for Genesis type, so we don't know what's going to be developing in the future just yet. It's still brand new. 3.0 just came out like a week or so ago from the time of me making this video. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there as a bonus tidbit for maybe this team could maybe be a thing in 3.0 as well, or it might have different options. Actually, it really just depends, but I just kind of wanted to throw it in there as a bonus. If anything does change once we get closer to the 3.0 patch, then I'll definitely come back and maybe make a video talking about potential new teams with Juvis. So anyway, that is going to be it for the video. I hope you guys did enjoy the teams, and I hope you guys do use some of them. If you have any cool team ideas, let me know in the comment section below to help out other players as well. Again, don't be afraid to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.